Welcome to the show, Ivy Nation Sports Talk on a Thursday. Great to have you with us here today. He's Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers, and we are rolling out something new today. We're debuting a new theme show. It's called We In or We Out. The topics that we're going to be discussing, all submitted by Irish Breakdown subscribers on the new Champions Lounge board. So that is the only way to get a question in on today's show, by submitting the question on the Champions Lounge. And we've got a ton of stuff.
Lots of good stuff.
I know.
This makes it easy. I just show up and talk about other people's questions, basically.
I know. And I think the key word is easy. It's like you just sit there and wait for all the questions to come in. It's, not completely different than a mailbag, but again, we get them from the Champions Lounge and not from the chat here on the show. So a lot of good stuff. Looking forward to it. And you want to just jump right into this first one?
I guess so. It's better than this cold and rainy weather in Cleveland right now.
I know, right? I know. So I really like this first one. It is from 3rd and 7 Duo. He says, last year in the Pivot podcast, Marcus Freeman said he didn't originally think he would become a head coach, but rather an athletic director or an administrative type role. So the question is, Freeman will coach Notre Dame until he becomes Pete Bavacqua's replacement as athletic director. Are we in or are we out on that?
I'm going to start by saying that we or me is in. And the big reason that I am in is because Marcus Freeman, to me, one of his biggest attributes as a head coach is the relationship that he builds with everyone else around him. And I think that's a very crucial role, or something that you need to do well as an athletic director. And when I think of this, I kind of think of like when Brad Stevens, became the GM of the Celtics after coaching the Celtics for, a good amount of time.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that was very, beneficial to both parties. While the Celtics haven't, made it yet, they definitely are getting deeper. And, this year, I think they have their best opportunity to kind of win it all. So I do think that that's something that Marcus Freeman would be really good at.
DJ says he's out because he thinks he's going to coach for a long time. Salty says in on this, but look at it this way, DJ. Right now, Marcus Freeman is 38 years old. Pete Bavacqua is like 52, 53 years old. So he's basically maybe a year and a half younger than Jack Swarbrick was when Swarbrick took over as athletic director, because Swarbrick is now 70 years old. So think about that. So think about 16 years from now, when Marcus Freeman is 54, he'll basically be Bavacqua's age. And again, the same age Swarbrick was. And I think this is really interesting because, as you said, because of the kind of personality that he has, the kind of things I think that he could do, like he's already doing at Notre Dame as the head coach, as a fundraiser and all those different kind of things, because of all the different alumni groups that you talk to and all those different things. And the athletic director's got to be the point man on all of that kind of stuff. And so I think Marcus Freeman is already gaining that kind of experience. And it's relatively rare. Like you brought up Brad Stevens, obviously pro, so a little bit different, but kind of the same thing. Barry Alvarez, the former Notre Dame defensive coordinator under Lou Holtz, who went on to become the head coach at the University of Wisconsin, who transitioned into being an athletic director at the University of Wisconsin. He was like the only football guy who's made that recent transition that I could think of. But, there've been some others. John Cohen, who's now at Auburn, he used to be the baseball coach at Mississippi State. He went from that into athletic director at Mississippi State before going to Auburn last year. Skip Bertman, Hall of Fame baseball coach at LSU. became the LSU athletic director and ultimately hired Paul Maneri away from Notre Dame down there to LSU. So those are a couple examples of guys who went from coaching to becoming the athletic director. And I would not Tom Osborne, good one. I forgot about Tom Osborne. Thanks for that, Adam. I think it's a very interesting, because again, we're talking 16 years from now. Yesterday, the question came up, and I think Salty asked it, would Marcus Freeman exceed both the years and the wins that Brian Kelly had when he was at Notre Dame? The odds say no, because you're talking about 12 years and you're talking about the all-time winningest coach in Notre Dame history. So the odds say no to that. And with that in mind, if he continues to be a successful football coach, though, let's say he wins a national championship or two, I think that there would be a very good chance that he could transition into a role like that as athletic director. Because again, he's got the personality for it.
Yeah, he's got the personality for it, and you already see him go to, other sporting events. How often do you see him at basketball games? I think he's been to hockey games. Like, he makes his presence known at various sporting events, just as the head coach of the football team. And then also, I kind of wanted your opinion. A lot of people are bringing up kind of like the success factor. Do you think that he has to achieve X in order to become athletic director? You know what I mean? Like, do you have to win?
If he was going to do it here at Notre Dame, I think he would probably have to. I think he would have to win a national championship at Notre Dame for that to happen. Like to be able to move into that seat, because if he didn't, he would always be the head coach who didn't, kind of reach that ultimate goal. So I think if he's going to do it at Notre Dame, and the question was specific to being Pete Bavacqua's successor, I think that he definitely has to win a national championship at Notre Dame for that to happen. Do you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Next one. In the next 5 years, Notre Dame plays in 2 national championship games. We in or we out? That's from Darvis.
The fan in me wants to say we in. The more realistic side of me wants to say we out. So I'm going to go with we out. I don't think it's 2. And I think 1 is like a 60 to 70% chance. That's where I think I would put my 1 at. So I just have to go with we out for that. I think I'm just too analytical for a question.
It's amazing how quickly everyone's just ready to jump in and of course it's going to happen. Look, you're a fan. You're supposed to think that, right? I mean, that's why you're a fan of the program. I mean, it's trending in the right direction, but I think that I agree with you, considering they've only played in 1 national championship game in the last, going on 36 years now at this point. The odds that they would play in 2 in the next 5 are definitely against them. Now, what do they have going in their favor? They've got Marcus Freeman and his coaching staff, the quarterback recruiting at the top of the list, and the overall recruiting does continue to get better. Now, what makes it tougher now than even just last season, is the multiple rounds that you've got to get through in a 12-team and soon to be 14-team format. The next 2 years, it's going to be a 12-team format. Then it's going to go to a 14-team format. So you're going to have to win more games just to get to that championship. I'm pretty confident that they can at least get to 1 national championship game, though. So I don't think 2, but I would be in on 1, just like you. I think that 60 to 70% is probably the confidence level that I have. All right, next one is from Real Irish, 1988, if I can get it up here on the board. This is an interesting one as well. Deion Colzie will lead the team in touchdowns and be second on the team in big plays this season. The reasoning: Greathouse will be the leading receiver. Mitchell will be the most explosive receiver. The third wheel will be Deion, 6'5", jump ball, back shoulder, big radius, ball catcher. I just don't see a world where Mike Denbrock sees that potential and keeps him on the field. We all know Deion is an end game player. We're not talking about practice, Allen Iverson. So we in or we out, Jess, on that kind of production from Deion Colzie this season?
I want to be so in, but I have to say we are out because while I love the rationale, like I'm following the rationale of being, like Great House kind of being your receiving guy, a lot of receptions, a lot of yards. Mitchell being kind of like the home run guy, hitting the big, 30-40 type plays, 30-40 yard type plays. So you have to have someone that's really just a big body inside the last 20 yards, right? And so who do you kind of look at to be that person? Maybe it's Deion Colzie. Maybe it's Mitchell Evans. Maybe it's Eli Raridan. Maybe it's Bo Collins. I think just because there's that pool of people is too big, that's why I have to go with we out, because it could be any of those people. And I think all of those people have a legitimate shot to be, the big body following the rationale that was laid out here, because I do like the rationale.
No, I like the rationale as well. The problem is this: Deion Colzie is going into his fourth year, and as some people in the chat have pointed out, health has been a big issue for him. It was an issue last year. It was an issue the year before that, and he has 16 career catches for just 304 yards in his first 3 seasons at Notre Dame. 9 catches in one season is his career high. Now, again, I realize as what was the handle there? Again, Real Irish 1988 points out, you do have Mike Denbrock coming in, so new offensive coordinator, new philosophy, and the whole thing. But I just, along with the injuries, consistency has been a big issue for Deion Colzie as well. We saw some nice things from him in the blue gold game, but we got to see that game in, not just game in, game out, practice in as well. Because if the season started today, Deion Colzie would not be in that 6-man rotation that Mike Brown was talking about this spring. He said, saying he wants a rotation of 6 wide receivers, because you got Bo Collins coming in, and I would expect Bo Collins to be in there before Deion Colzie at this point. Corey Robinson and Denbrock's offense healthy, it's possible, is what Mike is saying. Yeah, I mean, look, it is possible, but I have a hard time, based on what we've seen from Deion Colzie in his first 3 seasons, seeing him going from that to the kind of production that Real Irish is talking about right here. I think it's just too big a jump for me, new offensive coordinator or not. I don't think you disagree with that, do you, Jess?
No, I do not.
All right. So I kind of, before Brian showed me how to do the screen share thing, I kind of put the questions in my own order. So now I have to go back to the screen to see if I can actually find the questions so that I can put them up on the screen. I think I'll just skip it on this one because I can't find it right now. So from DJ, Christian Gray is considered Notre Dame's best cornerback by season's end. We in or we out on that?
I'm going to go with we out because I don't think there's anything. Well, there are things that could be done. I take that back. I don't think Christian Gray is going to do enough to replicate what Benjamin Morrison has already accomplished and set the precedent and the bar at the cornerback position. I understand that he's got the injury, and so that could play into it. I think by the end of next season, Benjamin Morrison will be fully healed, and whether that means he played 6 games, 12 games, 15 games, 3 games, I still think he's going to be NFL ready, and he is going to be, a better corner than Christian Gray come that time.
By the way, Jesse, there was no big show earlier today, so this show, as Salty says, has to knock it out of the park. No pressure on this one, but what you need to make sure you do is hit the like button, thumbs up. All right. Thank you very much, Salty. I do appreciate that. I'm out because what you said and because of what USMA 87 is saying here. as well. As long as Benjamin Morrison is healthy, it's going to be Benjamin Morrison. That doesn't mean Christian Gray is not going to be really, really good, because he's going to be really, really good. But if Benjamin Morrison's healthy, Benjamin Morrison, I'm talking too fast, is the answer to this question. I did see today, right before we came on, by the way, Benjamin Morrison has got a camp that he's putting on, a youth camp back in his hometown in Arizona next month. So, like talking about his health, we need to get some boots on the ground there in Arizona next month. Show up, take your kid. I think it was like 6 to 8 years old or something, 6 to 8th graders, or let me see if I can find it here real quick. You have a kid you can take to Benjamin Morrison's camp and scout it out and see if he's still in the sling and what he looks like. He says, I'm excited to host the next generation of All-Americans at the Benjamin Morrison Youth Football Camp, June 1st in Phoenix, Arizona. Registration free, open to grades. Okay, so it's grades 6 through 8. Register today. You can go to Benjamin Morrison's Twitter page to get all the details about that. But we need somebody out there to see what BMO looks like. But yeah, again, Christian Gray is going to be really, really good, and Notre Dame, if both of those guys are healthy, just going to be shut down with both of those guys out there this season, especially considering the competition they're going to be playing against. So it's going to be Benjamin Morrison. If
what
Morrison's
tandem
healthy.
do you feel better about? Last year's Benjamin Morrison and Cam Hart, or this year's Christian Gray and Benjamin Morrison?
As much as I like Cam Hart, and as much as Vince has a man crush on Cam Hart and what he did last year, I'm much more up on this duo of Christian Gray and Benjamin Morrison this season. I think it could be the best cornerback tandem that maybe we've ever seen at Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do. And I think Cam Hart is potentially close to his ceiling. I still think he's got room for improvement, but I think Christian Gray is like he could really still go. You know what I mean? I think his, I guess, sort of where he was so young in comparison to Cam Hart, I think he's already kind of, potentially about to surpass him.
Yep. Okay, so another one from DJ here. Davis Sherwood will have 2 touchdowns this season. We in or we out on Davis Sherwood getting 2 touchdowns?
I'm going to go with we in on this one. He had a touchdown last season. I think with the addition of Riley Leonard at quarterback, you're going to see more of the RPO, maybe more of the H-back sets, and utilizing, some sort of formations that involve Davis Sherwood. And I think eventually, Mike Denbrock, being as smart as he is as an offensive coordinator, he might do something to scheme Davis Sherwood eventually later on in the season to kind of slip off of, some sort of play fake or just some sort of design concept where Davis Sherwood kind of gets lost and he's kind of wide open for a touchdown. So that's my thought process, but I think he can get one more compared to last season with Riley Leonard at quarterback.
I've just got to go out on it. And the reason is Mike Denbrock with all the 11 personnel that we saw this spring, if he sticks to that, and we were talking a little about it yesterday, even some 10 personnel and stuff like that, I just feel like the H-back thing could be a factor. That's fair, but they do have a fullback on the roster, and they've also got that stable of running backs out there. So I just think it's going to be too hard for Davis Sherwood to get those kind of opportunities. So I've got to go out on the 2 touchdowns for Davis, unfortunately, this season. How about Eli Raridan? We in or we out on Eli having the most touchdown receptions of the Notre Dame tight ends?
We are out. I'm gonna be simple about this one. I think it's going to be Mitchell Evans.
And I mean, it's fair. Evans had 4 touchdowns a couple of years ago. I think they both had health stuff, and both of them, like Raridan is ahead of Mitchell Evans at this point in terms of recovery and all that kind of stuff. I'm going in on it, though. I think that Eli Raridan is kind of ready to take that mantle with the size that he's got. I think we're going to see more of him doing some different things out there. And I think that Raridan is going to be the touchdown leader for the tight ends this season. So I'm in on it. We disagreed on 2 in a row there. Next question from John A1. Nope, that was John A1 that we just did. From Lou Holtz's grandson. Riley Leonard will be a top 5 Heisman contender this season. We in or we out?
So let's kind of go through, potentially who could be up there. You have Quinn Ewers, you have Cam Ward, you have Carson Beck, you have Shedeur Sanders,
Jalen Milroe.
So that's where I think we're already up to 6. I think that Riley Leonard is definitely in the top 10 of Heisman contenders. And I'm going to, if he stays healthy, I'm going to go we in on this one. And I hate that it like a lot of those answers have come out that like the asterisk of if he's healthy.
Right.
But I really do think in an offense like this and combined with, Notre Dame's kind of presence nationally, if they have a really good season, 11 wins, maybe even 12 wins, get a nice seed in the expanded playoff and win a couple games. Yeah, I definitely do believe that he would get that recognition. So I'm going to go with we in because I also think that'll catapult him, into his NFL draft stock as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go in. I think that he will be a top 5 Heisman contender. Obviously, health is the biggest question. We just don't know right now. And it's very legitimate to say that you doubt what Riley Leonard can do this season because of the injury. Now, it is still just one injury, and he didn't have the surgery while he was at Duke because he tried to keep playing, and he's ended up having 2 surgeries since he's been at Notre Dame. The question is going to be, has Riley Leonard spent the last couple of weeks since spring practice ended just kind of chilling out, staying off that foot, staying off that leg, letting it heal as much as possible, just kind of, let things ride a little bit, get in the film room, maybe crunch some film and those kind of things, and then wait till everybody gets back in June when you start doing your conditioning to really get out there and actually get on your leg, because that's what that thing needs. I think that's the biggest thing, but just watching him toward the end of the spring after he had the foot surgery, he needed the bubble wrap that we talked about. He needed to be protected against himself, I think, to try not to do too much too soon, because you could tell, he wanted to be out there. But yeah, it's the biggest question. Can he stay healthy? And if he is healthy, then I think that he's going to have that kind of season. And, I know people want to, again, people want to put the injury prone label on him. It's still, for the most part, just one injury. It's just that, unfortunately, the way that it worked out as he tried to, come back and play last season, it just lingered longer than it needed to. But that's why he needs the extra rest right now before things start ramping back up in June once the team gets back after they go home for a little bit. Just go do some fishing, Riley. Do some fishing down there in Alabama. Don't try to push it too soon.
Maybe play a little bit of golf, something light.
That's right. Another one from Lou Holtz's grandson. That is his handle in the Champions Lounge. Notre Dame's failures in big games have been as much psychological as it has been due to a talent gap. We in or we out on that? Psychology versus talent. What do you think about that?
I'm going to have to go with we out on this one, because I think Notre Dame, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and I mean, not even especially, these are really smart overall kids compared to, the rest of, I think, the college football landscape. And I just don't believe that, Notre Dame isn't, I guess, mentally tough in many aspects. I think that it has been a combination of talent. I think that it has been, a combination of bad coaching in certain situations, and maybe overthinking things too much as a coaching staff, and instead of kind of, maybe what's going with what's working or simplifying some things in some of the bigger moments. But I just don't buy that the psychological aspect of it plays a part, because I think that they're really smart kids. And when I think of like the psychological stuff, I think of who was the punter or kicker a few years back that had the mental coach and stuff like that. That's what I think of. And I don't think the rest of the team kind of goes through that.
Dorr. Yeah.
Jonathan Dorr. I don't think the rest of the team goes through that sort of stuff.
But they do have multiple sports psychologists on staff over there at Notre Dame now to work different players, football and other sports as well, through a lot of different things. And I think it's a very fascinating area. And especially when you look at a guy like Jonathan Dorr, who you mentioned, I think a big part of that was mental. Some of it was physical as well. Look, there's always a combination, but I'm trying to think, last year against Ohio State, it was all execution. It was not a psychological thing.
Yes.
And, the question was about big games, because you can sit there and look and say, well, they had letdowns against Louisville and Clemson last year. And then you obviously weren't going to consider Louisville a big game. Clemson, should it have been a big game? Well, you were going to Clemson. You were favored to win that game. Obviously, the year before, Marshall and Stanford, neither one of those was big games. Now, you can talk about overall focus, game in and game out, and is that an issue? And I think that there is something to that when you look at how the last couple of seasons have played out, the way they've laid inexplicable complete eggs a handful of times and, done it in both seasons as well. But in terms of in the big games, is it a psychological thing? I don't think so, because it looked like they were finally going to get one of those games last year against Ohio State, and it simply came down to, did they make a couple more plays that they needed to, and they just weren't able to. So I don't put it on any psychological, like psyched out aspect or anything like that. So I'm out on that one. But again, I do think there's something to the, sort of mental state, overall consistency. That is something that needs to improve as we go into this season, like to not have those letdowns and those lulls.
Agreed.
By the way, D-Rock Irish jumping in. He was talking about the guy on 24/7 Sports that didn't have Notre Dame in his top 35. Yes, we talked about that yesterday. So if you want, you can either go back to the podcast or to the YouTube from yesterday, and we addressed that right off the bat on yesterday's show. So everybody was here. I was here. Vince was here. Brian was here. We were all here sounding off about that yesterday. From Domer Grizz, Josh Burnham plays more snaps at big defensive end than RJ Oben this year. We in or we out on that one?
I'm going to have to go with we out on this one. I think RJ Oben has more proven success. I think he is going to bode well and play better in the run game. I think a lot of people just think defensive end sometimes is all about, rushing the passer and getting sacks and those sort of things. But it's also, setting the edge, squeezing down in the run game, doing sort of, I think some of the littler aspects of playing defensive end. I just think that RJ Oben at this point in his career is a bit more refined than Burnham.
Yeah, I'm out on this one as well. I do think that Josh Burnham is going to see significant snaps, though, this season. He's
for sure.
Yeah, he's going to be deep in the rotation, and he had a nice spring. He didn't necessarily jump the way a couple of other guys did, but he had a really nice spring. And Josh Burnham, rather, is going to get a lot of reps along with RJ Oben. I still think that Oben is going to be ahead of him in terms of the snaps. He is very similar to Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Oben is. So I think that he's going to get the majority of the snaps, but Burnham is going to factor in. And then I think not this season, but next season, Josh Burnham will elevate to being the guy at that big defensive end spot. But not quite ready this season. Again, he's going to play, and I think he's going to be really productive, but he's not going to get the majority of the snaps there, I don't think. From Ballpeen Shalala, the offense under Coach Denbrock, Notre Dame lights up opposing defenses this year, and we end up with the all-time scoring record being set 2 years in a row. And by the way, 39.2 points a game, the modern record set last year. We in or we out on that one, setting another scoring record for the offense this season under Mike Denbrock.
So this one is tough because Notre Dame last season did a tremendous job of turning their turnovers into points. You know what I mean? Like whether it was a pick six, whether it was getting a fumble or an interception in plus territory and getting the offense set up really well. You know, I think the defense is going to be as good, if not better this season, but it's so hard to predict the turnover stuff. And I think that's a big part of this question.
You'll be asked to predict turnover stuff in a little bit, by the way.
And so I think that, you know, the offense is for sure going to be better than last season. And so that gives, you know, I guess that point per game, you know, knock up a little bit. But what could bring it down potentially is, like I was saying, how many turnovers are they creating that is going to lead to points? And I think that's more of the chance stuff. So long story short, I'm going to go with we in because I think the offense is going to be.
Did you just do a little curve there? Did you start off we out, but then talk yourself into we in?
I was kind of, you know, giving the rebuttal first and then swerving back into why we are in, because the offense is going to be much better this season. And I think it's going to be much more explosive. And I think it'll counteract maybe the not so many turnovers on defense.
This is the answer right here, as DJ says. Weaker schedule, 40-plus point games galore. That was basically my answer, is because of the schedule that they're playing with Miami, Ohio, and Northern Illinois, and Purdue, and Stanford, and all these teams that they're going to have. It is an even lighter schedule than what they had last year. The defense is going to be even better, the offense is going to be even better. And so I think that they're going to be up over 40 points a game this season. So I am definitely in on this one, setting the modern scoring record 2 years in a row for the Notre Dame offense.
Do we hear I know we heard the dog. Do we hear
we hear. We hear. Also from Ballpeen Shalala, the team ends the 2024 season with a plus 10 turnover margin. We in or we out?
We are out. As much as I'm going to love Riley Leonard, I do think his style of game is a little bit, you know, maybe more turnover prone and maybe a little bit more fumbly than what we've seen in the past. Yeah, more fumbly. You like that? I'm going to go with we out because I think that naturally, you know, with the aggressiveness and Riley Leonard's style of play, I think you might see a little bit more turnovers by the offense.
This one is the toughest to predict, and you might remember last year when I was talking about Duke. Now, Duke turned out to be a very good opponent, good defense. That's what they were built on, is their defense. But they were off the charts in turnover margin in Mike Elko's first season there 2 years ago. And that is the hardest thing to translate from one season to the next, to be that good in turnover margin. Like, you know, you can still
be a good
consistent,
defense.
causing, be a good defense. But in most cases, turnovers are somewhat random, like, you know, how they come about. You know,
and that's kind of what I was trying to get at the, you know, the last question with, you know, when they come, what part of the field they come on,
right?
Where are they leading to picks? Like that stuff is just all chance and luck at that point. You're going to get turnovers, you just don't know when and where you're going to get them.
Right. So for that reason, you know, they were +7 last year, and it's still a very solid +7. So I'm like D-Rock Irish. I'm a very close out on this one. I think they'll still have a respectable turnover margin, probably similar to what they had last year, like a +7, because again, turnover margin also, you know, turnover margin is not just how many takeaways you have, but how many giveaways
a little
does
net
the offense
sum
have. And, you know, like Notre Dame is still a very ball secure team, but look at what happened I think Sam Hartman, to me, had more turnovers than I thought he was going to have last year, especially when you factor in the fumbles that he has. Just like look at the Louisville game. And, Louisville fans were all over him, remember? Like calling him a turnover machine and all that stuff going into that game that week. And then I was like, there's nothing to that, no matter what he did, 2 years ago or whatever it was. And there he went and
turned it over.
Biggest turnover game of the season. So that's the part of the equation that, go ahead.
What do you think of, like, what is good for you? Like, just as long as you're not negative?
Yeah.
Anything in the positives?
Yeah, I think so.
Very comparable to what? Like you as a hitter, you want to have like a 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio. Like that's kind of like
right
what you would aim for.
As long as you're not, because what's every coach talk about? What's the first thing when you ask a coach?
Turnover battle.
Who wins the turnover battle? Going to win the game, right? And if you're plus in the turnover margin, the odds say you're going to win the game. So I think, yeah, if you're at least even just moderately on the plus side, you're good. That's a
turnover battle and low penalties. You got a great chance at any game.
That's right. Oh, Salty, mind is always in the gutter.
I feel like that's like that. That's a Saturday Night Live skit waiting to happen.
From Joe Allen 72, Notre Dame defense will break the single-year record for sacks this season. 41.5, the record. They had 31 last year. We in or we out?
We are out. I don't think that they have everyone. I maybe everyone. I am not confident in the Viper position, and I know that that's not. You don't get maybe as much production as maybe the true defensive end, and that'll be RJ Oben and Josh Burnham. But I just think that when you have question marks at the position like Viper, the last thing that you should be talking about is the single season sack record.
Yeah, I've got to be out on this one as well. Again, I think they'll have a nice number. Now, because of what you're talking about, they still had 31 sacks last year, and that's with the Viper not giving them a ton of production in terms of the sacks. But they got them from all over the place because what? Because Al Golden will bring those blitzes in all different directions, and the linebackers are going to be more athletic. And you're going to, like Jalen, you're going to have all these guys who are going to be able to get to the quarterback. I think, I could see him in the 35, 36 range. I think that this one is coming especially as if Al Golden stays here and they keep recruiting at the level that they're recruiting at, I think that this record is going to fall in the relative near future, but I don't see it this year. And part of it, look, you're playing 2 service academies this year as well, not just Navy. You're playing Army as well. So that's going to take away opportunities for sacks just right there. Again, the schedule is not that difficult, but basically 2 of the 10 teams that you're going to play are triple option. You're going to have fewer opportunities for sacks. So I'm going to say no. Now, the one caveat would be you get to the playoff and you win a game or, a couple of games, you play in a few games, they might end up getting it that way. Like if they end up playing 15 games this season, something like that.
Yeah. And Michael Campbell here says, defensive tackle by Howard Cross and Riley Mills will give them way more sacks from more than the Viper. I just have to disagree with that. They don't have an Aaron Donald up the middle. Last year, they combined for 4.5 sacks. When you're talking about 41.5 sacks, I don't think that, even if you got, let's say 10 out of them.
And I mean, those 2 guys were there last year too, right?
Right.
It's
you're not getting, 30 sacks between your defensive end and Viper position, even if you get, 10 out of those 2. So I don't see it happening.
Here's where the sacks came from last season. Bertrand, 2.5. Howard Cross, 2. Kaiser, 1.5. Watts, 2. Javante John Baptiste. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at tackles for loss. I've got to start this over again. Bertrand, 2.5. I started off on the right line and then I jumped to the wrong column. So Bertrand, 2.5. Cross, 2. Kaiser 1.5, Watts 1.5, Jean-Baptiste 5, Mills 2.5, Leofau 3, Thomas Harper 2, Jordan Botello 4, Nana Osafa-Mensah 3. So again, like Cross had 2, Riley Mills had 2.5. So those guys combined for 4.5 last year. Now Jason Onye talked about this. I think that he's going to give them a chance to, to get more pressure up the middle in some of those third and long situations when he comes in for Howard Cross in the middle. But I just don't see a huge spike coming this year with largely a lot of the same people out there. Yep. And again, when you're playing 2 triple option teams, that's not going to help you either. All right. What was the next question? Okay. So this one is from With Your Chest. Irish receivers who transferred out over the last 12 to 14 months prior to receiving their degrees see the growth and development plus production of this year's wide receiver room and the loss of their 4 for 40 potential and regret their choices to transfer. We in or we out on that?
I got to read that again. There's a lot going on.
There's a lot to it. Basically, what he's saying is they're not going to develop at the level they need to develop at, and they're also going to regret not having that Notre Dame degree ultimately. And they're going to regret their decisions to transfer.
Okay, now I'm seeing here because you got guys who transfer, they're not getting their degree, they're not getting growth, and then they're going to see, what the other wide receivers did at Notre Dame in this new Mike Denbrock offense. I'm going to have to go with we in because I don't think that Rico Flores is going to enjoy. I think he's going to regret going to UCLA. I don't think that, what's his name? Chris Tyree is going to regret it. I think that Chris Tyree wanted to be the central focus wide receiver. And I think that's what ultimately would get him, a chance at the NFL. So I don't think he's going to regret anything because I think he has a more centralized role at Virginia. I'm trying to think what other wide receivers left.
Braylon James,
TCU. Yeah, I think he will definitely regret it. I don't see TCU having an offense that's going to replicate what Notre Dame's going to do. Was there anyone else? Was there a fourth one?
Tobias Merriweather.
He is definitely going to regret it, but I don't know if his game is ever going to get figured out, to be honest with you. So
I just feel like he was shaping up to be one of those guys with all the talent, but was he ever going to put it together?
Yeah, and I don't know if Notre Dame or wherever is going to be the answer. I think that's more of inside of Tobias Merriweather. So overall, I'm going to say we in. Sorry, that's kind of a roundabout answer.
Yeah, and again, this is a big question, because he's considering development, production, the whole
what the degrees can do for you afterwards.
Right. Like they're not going to regret the degree in the short term. That'll be a long-term thing, and if they make it to the NFL, they'll probably say it was worth it because the talent is still going to rise to the top. So I'm somewhat in on this, but I think it's going to take them longer maybe to realize some of this than just, within the next 2-3 years, whatever it happens to be. Michael Johnson, all the transfer wide receiver went to subpar teams. And that is very true as well. Very true. This one's from Salty. So he says, after 3 consecutive national championships, the third, aided by the Great One's unexpected decision not to leave early for the NFL, despite his college football leading seasons at wide receiver, Notre Dame Stadium will come to be nicknamed the Great House that Rockne built. We in or we out on
that? We are going to have to go with we out because I think it is going to be known as the Carr House after CJ Carr and company lead Notre Dame to 2 back-to-back national championships before he goes on to the NFL. I don't think Jaden Greathouse will have anything to do with it. CJ Carr has better potential.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Salty was joking around a little bit on this, but I'm gonna have to be out on this one. I'm sorry.
I thought it was more fun to give you someone who would have a better shot, and that's the car house.
Yeah, I like that one as well. What's up with the cat today? The cat is just like
Cranky, took away the automatic feeder where he constantly has food. And
oh,
so he's just angry and yelling at me for food because now he only gets food when I give it to him.
you're the only one in the house, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And I was gone all day working, so
All right.
I think all the animals are mad at me.
This one is from Ramcray75. The SEC and Big Ten will announce that they are breaking away from the NCAA to form a new governing body for college football by the end of the calendar year. We in or we out on that one? He says, for various info for context, the body will take effect for the 26th season. It'll dictate the playoff format, money, lots and lots of money.
This is something I feel like you could talk about for an entire show type question, or at least a lengthy amount of time. But I'm just gonna have to say we out. Do I think that the SEC and the Big Ten are we in? Because I think that they could maybe potentially accomplish something like this. I do, but I just don't. I don't see them, becoming their new own governing body. I think that the college football will always kind of remain the structural, governing body support for all of the conferences.
Well, and I mean, look, let's start with, he says, various info for context, money and lots of money. They've already got money and lots of money from the TV contracts that they just signed. And they were also a major part of this 14-team playoff expansion. They got what they wanted, and they're going to get money and lots of money from that. So does it mean, I think it is closer to 10 years away than it is 1 or 2 years away. So I'm not saying it's never going to happen, but I think it's farther down the line, maybe potentially after this 14-team playoff that they just signed, after that happens, and the TV contracts that they both just signed, after those expire. I think it could be down the road. But again, I'm not ruling out that it's ever going to happen, but I've got to be out on it happening within the next year. I don't think we're going to see that kind of drastic change coming within the next year, because we've already seen massive change just based on all the shifting that's gone on with teams going to both of these conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten. And, again, like it's all because of the money that's behind it, the TV money that's behind it. And they just got those new contracts. So I don't see them breaking off within the next year or two. Again, down the line, yeah, but I think it's closer to 10 years away than it is 2 years away.
Agreed.
Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I was born ready for rapid. I feel like this whole show has just been rapid fire.
It kind of is.
Next question.
Kind of is. Right? I know. So we, of course, are debuting our new show theme called We In or We Out today. There were so many good questions. I had to kind of push some back for rapid fire because I knew, look at how long that it's taken us just to get to rapid fire at this point. So I've got more We In or We Out questions from the Champions Lounge that we're going to use for rapid fire questions tonight. So this one, within 3 years, Coach Freeman will have changed the national narrative that Notre Dame can't win the big, important games. We In or we out on that?
I'm going to have to say that we are out because I don't think that that's a large enough sample size for people to fully accept like that maybe that stigma is gone, right? I think that there will always be kind of an excuse, right? Like I don't think that, Notre Dame winning, maybe if you win a national championship, but I don't see, just playoff bursts or, just maybe a first round playoff win. I think it's going to take a lot because of who Notre Dame is. I think that they, the national media, whoever, they expect more out of Notre Dame. So it's going to take a lot to change that sort of stigma.
Jersey Bear is like coming at you right now. He's like, come on, Jesse, come on. It's a good question. Joe said fans or media, because there is a difference there, because it's like you're going to have to do it repeatedly.
That's what I mean. I don't know if
you like
how much is it going to take of repeatedly to even kick it out of everyone's thought process anymore.
Right. Because even let's say you get to the 12-team playoff and you get to the semifinal. Well, what's going to happen with each round you go? The games get tougher. So I think the narrative is going to shift to some extent to, well, Notre Dame can win those first couple games. They can get to the playoff, but can they actually win playoff games?
Right.
And that kind of thing. Now, again, based on the quarterback they've got, based on the defense that they've got, that I think is going to continue to play at an elite level as long as Al Golden is here, based on the offense that I think is going to become elite with Mike Denbrock and the kind of quarterbacks and the kind of skill position talent that they're bringing in, I'm going to go against you, Jess, and I'm going to say I'm in on this one.
This is a lot. I think that people should really feel good about this, because you don't just float up, good, feel-good answers. There's a lot that goes that you have less Vince in you.
That's right. That's exactly right. I have far less rose-colored glasses in me than our old buddy Vincenzo has. Look, they were very close, and I know close doesn't count, but they were very close to starting to shift that narrative. And then, like at the end of the, with the Ohio State game last year, it looked like it was finally going to happen. Like you're going to beat one of the current titans in the sport of college football. And then, unfortunately, it just unraveled over the last 3.5 minutes of that game. But I think that because of all the factors that I just mentioned, I think that Notre Dame is knocking on the door right now. And what was the question? Again, within 3 years, I do think that they are going to at least start to shift that narrative. Again, the thing about narratives is they can always change, right? The narratives always shift to meet whoever's criteria, that they want to talk about. Just like that stupid, top 30 ranking yesterday that we picked apart. It's like, okay, these are the reasons that I'm saying Notre Dame doesn't belong here. But then when you apply it to half the teams that the guy had in that top 30, well, he's not even applying the same criteria that he was talking about with Notre Dame. But that's what national narratives are all about. It's always going to suit the person who's talking about it. So I think that the narrative will at least start to shift, but I don't think it is going to fully be changed within the next 3 years. To do that, you're literally going to have to win a national championship, not just get to a national championship game.
Yeah, so you guys, all of you believe, I'm marking this down in my notes, Notre Dame's winning a national championship within 3 years.
Okay, next question. Both the Notre Dame football and women's basketball teams will make it to the Final Four this upcoming season. We in or we out?
Man, I did not see that one.
I think this might have been a late ad because there were some questions that got in later this afternoon that got thrown in there. So
we are 100% in. All you had to say was women's basketball team in Final Four, and I didn't have to hear anything else, because I think that this roster this season was really freaking good, and it had a lot of injuries. It had a lot of, players in and out, a lot of, I guess what you would call synchronization, right? Like just because of the people coming in and out, it's nothing that you can or can't really control, right? So it's like different, rotating fives playing together, six, whatever the rotation might be. So, you combine the talent of Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo, you add, this stud of a big, you have these key pickups in the transfer portal. You combine the fact that Notre Dame already plays outstanding defense. It's just like they almost got to the Elite Eight last season and the season before, and this roster is going to be way better, not way better, but just better than those rosters. So I'm a big we in.
So hold it. I thought you started off on we out. This is football and women's basketball are in. So you're in with women's basketball, but are you in with football as well? I know you
Well,
didn't get to see the question. Here's the question. Both the football and women's basketball teams will make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I'm in on the football team as well.
I'm definitely in on the women's basketball team because I've been saying it all along. If they had been healthy last year, I felt like they had a legitimate shot of being a Final Four team last year. When you look at everything that they've added, getting Olivia Miles back, the whole kit and caboodle, they are a Final Four team this season. They're going to be one of the favorites all season to be a Final Four team. The men's is where it gets more difficult. And Vince and I were talking about, like, what are the matchups going to look like? Who do you have to play along the way? Are you going to have, like, what's all that going to look like? So I'm definitely in on the women. I am going to have to, I think that the football team. All right, I'm going to talk myself into it. I'll go, yes, we in. We in on both. Get a couple of wins, you're in the Final Four, right?
Yeah.
In on it.
Especially if that first game is at home.
It all rides, as I think someone already said. Yep, there's Joe. It all rides on Riley Leonard's health because we are all fully confident. I think most of us are fully confident that Steve Angeli can go out there and beat 80% of the teams on the schedule. The question with Steve Angeli is how can he
even give him 90%.
Okay. How can he do against the elite teams on the schedule? That's what Riley Leonard can do. So, but if Leonard is healthy with the defense that Notre Dame has, I'll say yes. I'll say a Final Four team. Jeremiah Love will have 12 total touchdowns this season in the regular season. We in or we out on that?
We are in. Audric Estime had 18 last season as a pure rusher. I see Jeremiah Love being the workhorse back. Maybe not as much production as Audric Estime, but you combine the overall production that he will get at the wide receiver position. I think he will mix in a couple, receiving touchdowns, whether that be a screen. I don't know. I think he's going to find a way to get a couple receiving touchdowns. He definitely will have some rushing touchdowns. So give me a we are in, because I think he is the best athlete on the entire offense, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, Andrew says in if you count receiving, and we're definitely counting receiving. We're saying total touchdowns. I think he's going to have, like at least 8 rushing touchdowns. And so that, all he needs then is 4 receiving touchdowns, which I think that he is going to get, with the elusiveness that he has and his ability that he showed this spring to go out and catch the ball. So I am in on Jeremiah Love having at least 12 total touchdowns this season. Going back to what we were just talking about, Michael says Steve Angeli can't beat a top team, ? No, he can't. I'm sorry. If he's going to be check down Charlie, Michael, he can't beat a top team. He has to show better ability to read the defense, not get locked in on his primary read, not be so quick with his eyes, and have a willingness to throw the football downfield. 90% of the throws that we've seen him make live those last couple of weeks of training camp, and even going back to the bowl game last year, have all been checkdowns. There's a big difference between a top team and the Oregon State team that he beat in the Sun Bowl last year. Like I said, I have every confidence that he can go out there and beat Purdue and Miami, Ohio, and Louisville and all these other teams. But the question is, can he beat a ranked team? And the Steve Angeli that we've seen right now, no, I don't think he can. That's why you brought in Riley Leonard.
You don't get paid to win the games that you're supposed to. You get paid to be the difference maker, to win the games in the crucial moments. I don't think Steve Angeli can do that quite yet.
Andrew says check down Charlie probably beats Clemson last year, but Clemson wasn't a top team. Like, that's a team.
I don't think Angeli beats him. The defense had us very well schemed last season. There was, I don't think there was anything that was going to be done last season to win that game. It's just Notre Dame was completely out schemed in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, Notre Dame did it to Clemson the year before at Notre Dame Stadium. Clemson turned the tables on them from that aspect. last year. TD4ND asks if CJ Carr can beat a top 10 team this
I
year.
give him a better chance than Steve Angeli.
I would too. Again, based on all the things that I just mentioned, like the way CJ Carr reads the defense versus the way Steve Angeli reads the defense, the way CJ Carr keeps his eyes downfield going through his progressions.
There's just far more boom.
Guy.
There's far more boom in CJ Carr than there is Steve Angeli.
Right. There will be a 1,000-yard receiver and a 1,000-yard rusher for Notre Dame this season. In or out on that?
We are out on a running back over 1,000 yards, but we are in over for a receiver with 1,000 yards. I just Audric Estime had 1,300, and that included. That didn't include. That was in 12 games this season. I don't think that Jeremiah Love will get even 300 less because I don't think that's his style of game. I think that he will. They're going to work in more running backs this season. I don't think you're going to see Jeremiah Love getting the type of workload, straight running the ball like Audric Estime got. Obviously, he's going to be used more in the passing game. But yeah, I don't see, and this isn't a negative thing. I just think the running back room as a whole is going to do what they're supposed to and be really good. They're just not going to have a guy over 1,000 yards.
Yeah. I thought that last year the carries might be a little bit more split than what they turned out being with Audric. Audric Estime turned into the workhorse, and a big part of the reason he turned into the workhorse is because of the load that he split the year before with Diggs. And I don't think that either one of these guys, Love or Jadarian Price, the two guys at the top going into the season, are going to be a workhorse type guy necessarily because of the skills that they have. I agree with what you're saying. I think it's going to be more split up, that we see something like even the year before, Estime was obviously up there around 1,000 yards, but I think it's going to be closer to a couple of guys with like 8 to 850, something like that. And obviously Love is going to get his share of passes. And I think Jadarian Price is going to get his share of passes as well. The 1,000-yard receiver thing, I mean, that is the magic question. I do think they've got a better chance there because of the quarterback and because of the way they upgraded that room with the experience that they've got. So, and because of Denbrock as well. But it's like we keep thinking that we're going to see better wide receiver production. It just hasn't come the last couple of years, though. No, I mean, that's fair, Michael. He says Audric Estime doesn't have the talent of Love or Price, but again, I don't think we're necessarily going to see those. Like, they're both very talented, but I think that they're going to split the carries as a result because they're both so talented. And I don't think that we're necessarily going to see one over the other. Now, the question could be with the schedule that they're going to play, are they just going to run roughshod over some teams that just, have the ability to just run it down people's throats? DK says we in with a question mark.
I think he just entered the chat. We in.
All right. The Irish offense will be as good, if not better, than the defense this season. We in or we out on that?
We are out. It is hard to be. Here's how I look at this question. Will Notre Dame finish higher as a top-ranked? Where will they finish nationally higher as a defense and an offense? I think the defense, in comparison with the rest of the college football landscape, will finish higher than what the offense would. And I just think that's because it's hard to have a really good offense, or you know what I mean, in college football, because there are a lot of other good offenses out there. I think it's easier to have a good defense, and I think Notre Dame's defense, I think it's harder to have a really good defense, and Notre Dame already has a really good defense, and they have a really good defensive coordinator, and so I think it's harder to have a really good defense. So
what do you say? So which is it harder to do? Settle your own argument. You're arguing with yourself.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm saying because of the way college football is played, I think it is easier to be an offense that scores a ton of points and that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And it's harder to have a good defense, but Notre Dame has a good defense.
They already have a good defense.
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. It felt like there was this, I don't even know.
The offense won't be
direction.
better than the defense. I'll just very much clarify it.
I agree with that. So I have to be out on this. Again, the offense I think is going to be very good, but as somebody pointed out, the defense is going to be a top 3 defense. And while the offense is going to be good, there won't be as good or better than the Notre Dame defense. Brian Kelly will retire before getting fired in the next 3 years at LSU. You in or you out on that one?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I'm gonna have to say everyone loves to drop their Brian Kelly hate, and I'm here for it. I think that they have made their commitment to Brian Kelly, so I'm gonna have to say I don't think he's gonna get fired.
No, but will he retire before getting fired?
No, I'm gonna have to say
I'm out on that one as well. I don't think he's gonna retire. He's gonna take every bit of that paycheck that he can.
Can't walk away from that money.
That's right. He will ride it till a bitter end. Okay, this is another one that we got from all these that we've done so far have come from the Champions Lounge. College football will move completely to the NFL model / Super League. We in or we out on that one?
So what is meant by like the NFL model? Like more
basically
so like
they're
contracts.
saying break away from the NCAA, and that like there was this whole thing about a Super League that was proposed about a month or so ago. The story came out, and basically none of the athletic directors or conference commissioners wanted anything to do with it.
So it'd be like the NFL's minor league system.
Well, they're not saying that, but what they're saying is, like the Power 5 kind of breaks away, and there would be, like a relegation type system, and there would be, like these divisions split up around the country and all this different kind of stuff, and TV contracts.
So more like soccer. That's how soccer usually is.
Yeah.
Regulation and while I like the concept, and I think that would be fun because at that point you just level everything and basically say the good programs get to stay, the bad programs you play other bad programs and hope to be promoted. Essentially, right. I think that has a lot of potential, but I'm just gonna have to say we out.
The problem with this again is the TV contracts that have already been signed. Like there's a lot of money that's riding on that right now. So what benefit is there to the SEC or the Big Ten to give up what they already have between the new playoff contract and their regular season TV contracts, and essentially give that up and reshuffle just to bring more teams in and give, other schools bigger pieces of the pie? Again, could it happen in 10 to 15 years? I don't doubt it, but I think that any major shift like this is more like 10 to 15, 20 years away than it is 2 to 5 years away. Yes. Could happen down the road, but I don't think it's imminent by any means. Fill in the blank. Reggie Miller was one of the announcers for Wednesday's New York Knicks-Indiana Pacers playoff game at Madison Square Garden. Miller probably fills blank that Knicks fans were chanting obscenities at him at the end of the game.
He feels no type of way about this because I think he still loves it. It probably gives him that feeling back to when he was playing, and we all know how he felt about it when he was playing. So, I think Reggie Miller is just one of those guys who's always naturally competitive, but also a guy that's just naturally just genuine, good guy. I don't think a lot of things get to him, bother him. I just think he's a real mentally sharp type of guy. I think he has more fun out of those situations. You know what I mean? He'd get more of like a chuckle and be like, come on, I can't hear you, kind of egg it on a little bit more. I think he relishes that type of stuff.
I think that's exactly it. I think he revels in it. I mean, I think that's why he was there. That's why TNT wanted him.
They strategically let him do that.
Absolutely. Series. Absolutely. Now, I did see some detractors in the media today, kind of like, well, it went overboard and all that kind of stuff. But as Michael says, he loves it. He loves to be hated. Like, he was wishing that he wasn't there taking photos with Spike Lee at the side of the court and Ben Stiller before the game. He wishes that he was still out there on the floor, and Spike Lee was, giving him the business like it was 25, 30 years ago, whenever that was. That's what he wishes. I mean, he loved it. That's why they sent him there. Again, I was just saying there were some people who were kind of taking shots at TNT's coverage, and I think some of it is legit because who was the Knicks player that got hurt in the first quarter? Yeah, Brunson was hurt, and like all the attention was on the Reggie Miller, Knicks Pacers rivalry, and it took a while to find out exactly what was going on with Brunson. There needed to be more attention on that from the sideline.
I think that's funny in itself because there was literally, I think I saw on Twitter, at least first it was his hand, then it was his foot, then it was his knee, then it was he took a hit to, maybe the wrong area and was just not feeling well for a while. And so there was and I don't think it was ever released what actually happened, but, he comes out at halftime, has a tremendous second half, and really, is the reason why they won. I thought the funnier moment during this thing, when the fans are chanting "F you, Reggie," is when Josh Hart comes up to him and takes off his headset. He goes,
"Right, and tells him.
that they're saying this, right?" I love that. I thought that was hilarious.
Right, and that's like the person who I saw saying that that the whole thing went overboard and nobody cares because this is something that happened all those years ago. I mean, obviously Knicks fans still know who Reggie Miller is if they were yelling "F you, Reggie Miller," chanting "F you, Reggie Miller" at the end of the game. So there's still something there, from both sides. So I thought it was funny though. So Ethan Strauss from The Athletic told Bill Simmons on his podcast this week that WNBA teams should just use the nicknames or the mascots of their NBA counterparts to give them better brand recognition. So, for example, instead of the Indiana Fever, which the WNBA team is called, they should just be called the W Pacers. Do you buy or sell that?
I actually really like this because I do believe if the WNBA and the sport of women's basketball is set on growth and expansion, I think that this is something that keeps the fans engaged because you can do so many different deal packages, where you're saying, hey, you get Pacers tickets, but that also gets you, 5 tickets to women's games throughout the season. And I think it goes well for, merchandise and fans buying apparel, that sort of stuff. And I think it going back on the expansion thing, the WNBA wants to add more teams. I think it's perfect because if you have the counterpart, it's kind of like a pilot program, right? Like for a WNBA team that doesn't exist, let's say in Minnesota, well, the links are there. San Antonio, or let's just say, like you can use it as like a pilot system to see how it's going to go and be like, okay, maybe not. And then maybe you try a different city. I just think it allows for expansion and kind of like the hand holding throughout the process.
This is something that I hadn't even thought about before, but I think when you look at it, it does make some sense because of what you talked about between branding. Like, think about college, for example. Like, it's Notre Dame men's basketball, Notre Dame women's basketball. Like, in Tennessee, they call them the Lady Vols or whatever. But like the nickname is still the same. They're all the Fighting Irish or the Vols or the game, whoever it happens to be, the Trojans, regardless of what the sport is in college, everyone goes by the same nickname. So I think that it would make a lot of sense because of what you're talking about. Like the branding, I think, would be more consistent. And when when you're talking about merchandising and just name recognition and the whole thing, I think it would actually make a lot of sense. I know that there were some who kind of shouted it down because, sexism and, whatever else. Can't everybody just have their own thing? I just think it would make sense rather than introducing this new name that people are still, if they're casual fans, they're not going to be as familiar with than the name that has been there for a while, the brand name that's been in those cities for a lot longer.
Yeah. I just really think, I don't think that the players would really care about the sexism because if you introduce, more merchandising, more ticket sales, more is, sales. You know what that means? The players are getting paid more. I don't think they care about, what their team name is or, where they're located. They care about playing professionally, developing their career, and quite honestly, making as much money as possible, right? So if that means that you're in the same city as these other organizations and you're attached to them and you're sharing the same arenas, whatever it might be, as long as it's making money, I don't think people really are going to care.
Yeah. Michael says that the WNBA needs to play during the NBA season. And I think one of the problems with that is availability of arenas and just logistically having all those things going on at the same time. I think the NBA likes having them separate, and the WNBA, like the way they do their draft with players coming right out of college and then rolling into a season into the summer, and they're trying to take advantage of the summer months when there's not as many things going on and things like that. I think they like it that way. And because the salaries are lower as well, it also gives those players the chance to go overseas and continue to play, overseas in Europe and some other places and make even more money playing basketball. So I think they kind of like the way the setup is right now. Because you're also not playing at the same time as women's college basketball, and then you're also talking about fewer TV opportunities if you were playing at the same time as the NBA and college basketball was going on.
Yes, I think it mainly has to do with TV opportunities.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Well, we're going to wrap it up with that. Jesse's got some traveling to do. He's heading back to South Bend tonight, so safe travels. Great questions today, by the way, in the all-new We In or We Out format show this evening. And again, the only way that you can participate and get a question in on the We In or We Out is if you post the questions on the new Champions Lounge board. So great questions tonight. Had a talk with the boss, and it sounds like he wants us to maybe do this a little bit regularly. So keep your eye out on the Champions Lounge for your chance to submit more questions. And as D-Rock says, hit that like button. We do appreciate it. Have a great night. We will be back tomorrow, 5 o'clock on Friday with a rapid fire show. All three of us will be here once again. Me, Jesse.
I'm out.
You're not going to be here.
We out.
You're not going to be here in the living room.
Nope. I got a Top Gun without you.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good. That is coming up for sure. Have a great night. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 5 o'clock on the Rapid Fire Show, IB Nation Sports Talk.